Welcome, everyone. We are happy to have you here today for Leveraging Lead Service Line Replacement for Workforce Inclusion and Growth. I'm Ruth Kersey, Senior Project Manager for Water Programs at Elevate and Project Manager for Cook County TAP. Cook County TAP is a resource hub designed to accelerate healthier water in Cook County communities. It's free technical assistance aimed at helping municipalities develop lead service line replacement programs and also implement water affordability best practices. You can find out more about the program and sign up for our newsletter at cookcountytap.org, and we're excited to be hosting today's webinar. I can't, move forward without giving a few reminders from Cook County TAP. So first, I just want to remind folks that the updated lead service line inventories are due next week on April 15th. And the final baseline inventories, just an FYI, will be due April 15th, 2027. And there's actually still funding available from the Illinois EPA to help you get your inventory together. And you can find out more information about that on our website, or you can always just get in touch with me and I can fill you in. And finally, our next webinar will be on the topic of applying for lead service line replacement state revolving funds. And so we'll be sharing some details about that soon. So before we get started, I just want to make sure everybody knows how to find their question and answer tool on their toolbar. So we'll just take a moment to review that. There you'll find a chat and the Q&A and our navigate all on the other navigation toolbars. And we ask that you ask your questions in the Q&A tool, and this helps us record your questions, any questions we didn't get to during the session, so we can follow up with you. And if you'd like to be taken off mute, you can ask a question. To ask a question, you can raise your hand, and you can do that, obviously, with the hand raiser thing, and we'll get to you as soon as possible. And we'll answer questions after the guest interviews are concluded. So what can you expect from today's webinar? In broad strokes, the goal of the webinar is to provide you an understanding of how the requirement to remove lead service lines from water systems can be an opportunity to support workforce development and how we get there. The guest interviews will last until about 3 p.m. and then we'll follow up with some questions. And that's when you'll have a chance to ask your questions. But feel free to put your questions in that Q&A at any time. The inspiration for today's topic comes from the recently released report of the same title, Leveraging Lead Service Line Replacement for Workforce Inclusion and Growth. And we're lucky to have Jay Rowell here, who was a contributor, and I believe that Darrell also contributed to that report. And you can find it on Cook County's TAP's website, and I'll also share it in the chat in a minute here. So the water program team at Elevate partnered with current HIRE360 and Metropolitan Planning Council to create the report. And it got Cook County TAP thinking that this was an important topic for our audience and that you could benefit from it. And we're very excited to have these three experts here with us today. So our guests will be guided by Melissa Gombar, Principal Director of Workforce Development at Elevate, and they're going to share their insights on and experience with this important topic. So with that, I'd like to welcome Melissa Gombar, the Principal Director of Workforce and Contractor Development at Elevate. Melissa leads Elevate teams across the country to deliver clean energy workforce, and clean energy contractor training. Her areas of expertise include people leadership, creating the conditions for exceptional workplace cultures, designing equitable and people-centered programs, policies, and processes, and facilitation of all things, which is why she's here today to facilitate our discussion. So welcome, Melissa. I'd also like to welcome our expert guests, which include Jay Rowell, the Executive Director of Chicago-based HIRE360. It's a unique partnership between developers, general contractors, the hospitality industry, and trade unions to connect underrepresented populations to opportunities. He previously served as a deputy treasurer for Illinois, where he helped to increase the number of minority and women-owned firms managing the state's investments, and previously was the director for the Illinois Department of Employment Security. He holds a law degree from Loyola University Chicago, and I was going to try to hold back, but I can't. My son is about to graduate from law school there I think it's May 9th. Nice. So we're very excited about that. And he was a contributor to the Workforce Development Report mentioned previously. Darrell King has worked in the water treatment industry since 1997 and currently serves as the City of Evanston's Water Production Bureau Chief. Darrell earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Grambling State University, a Master of Science degree from Rosalind Franklin University School of Medicine and Science, and holds an IEPA Class A water operator's license. He helped create the lead service line replacement workforce development program for Evanston, a Cook County community, and is a frequent guest at conferences across the region as a champion of clean water. We are also pleased to welcome Kareem Adeem, Director of the City of Newark's Department of Water and Sewer Utilities, who led Newark's nationally recognized lead service line replacement program beginning in March of 2019, helping to create Newark's lead service line replacement workforce development program and seeing completion of replacement of all the lead service lines in Newark in less than 3 years. And he has been invited to speak at major conferences nationwide, and Newark continues to upgrade water and sewer infrastructure under his leadership. So welcome to you all. We are certainly very excited to have you here today, and now I'll turn it over to Melissa Gumbar. So Melissa, I'll stop sharing my screen, and then I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks again, Ruth, for the great introduction. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to discuss workforce development with our distinguished guests. Workforce development is something that is very important to me. It's near and dear to my heart, hence the work I do at Elevate. And it's a subject that's often discussed, but people see it through multiple different lenses and have different definitions of it. So certainly workforce development helps businesses find and retain qualified workers, but it also creates sustainable jobs for the community. In my work and for today's conversation, we are going to focus on workforce development as an inextricable part of community infrastructure projects, literally where health and wealth come together within communities to drive economic growth and also ensure that the people who are most impacted have the ability to become directly involved in solving problems. So today I'm going to engage the wonderful individuals and knowledgeable individuals you see on the screen. They have worked extremely hard to create, manage, and champion the practical and aspirational aspects of workforce development and its relationship to the national, state, and local goal of removing all lead service lines from our water systems by 2037. And that is currently outlined in the federal lead and copper rule improvements. So with that, I would like to welcome our first panelist, Jay Rowell, the Executive Director of HIRE360. Jay, we're very excited to have you here with us today. And as Ruth mentioned earlier, HIRE360 is a construction workforce intermediary focusing on building pipelines, coordinating stakeholders, and also aligning labor demand with equity goals. You are also the co-author of the recently published report, Leveraging Lead Service Line Replacement for Workforce Inclusion and Growth. Given your engagement on the topic, can you please start us off with a definition of workforce development and then more specifically move into how you see lead service line replacement and workforce development coming together?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor to be with everyone today. Really appreciate the partnership with Elevate and Current and MPC on putting together this important report. And great we're having this conversation. I think for me, I'm always most interested in hearing more about what has happened in Newark and the great work there. I know Richard Diaz from the Blue-Green Alliance talks to me about this all the time, so I'm excited to learn from this panel discussion myself. So in terms of how we view workforce development, I think there's a pretty accepted definition of it. And I think the key is in that definition about it being a comprehensive strategy that prepares individuals for employment. And I think in the circumstance that we work in, which is the unionized construction industry, you really need every bit of that comprehensive component of this, right? So although this is starting to change, and I really appreciate the work the Chicago Public Schools are doing around providing more education and opportunities around the construction industry. We're working with them right now to bring about 1,600 CPS seniors out to see different trades programs, including the Plumbers Union. But they're just the first one is really the exposure component of this. Most people have never been to an apprenticeship program, often never to a construction site. And so it's sort of hard that someone will choose a career in this industry without that level of exposure. Second, after you've kind of see it, you got to make sure that this is right for you. And I think with a lot of the recruitment that we do, we have pretty blunt conversations with candidates about what it's like to work in construction, right? These are tremendous opportunities and unionized construction, great pay. But you got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's really hot or cold in Chicago, usually not too much in between those two ends of the spectrum, right? And it's also a process to get into the trades that has to be driven by the demand for construction work, right? And so the training that we do, which is really heavy on math and other components to help someone get into the trades, doesn't always end neatly when one of the apprenticeship programs opens up. And in fact, we just got a candidate into the Elevator Constructors Union, and it took about 4 years for that process to play out, right? And then you got to really stick with those candidates once they're in a different trade to make sure they're continuing to be connected to opportunities, right? And we've done a lot of work with that and with the city, trying to get more plumbing contractors in, and then matching up some of those candidates that we've gotten into the Plumbers Union and into other programs to those contractors.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. I love that comprehensive lens. And I would also like to turn to Kareem and Darrell to see if they have anything to add to those definitions and share how they see it. So Darrell, I'm wondering, what does workforce development mean to you?
For me and my experience with it here in Evanston, and thank you for having me as well. It could be a life changer, for an individual. With our program that we have here in Evanston, many of our candidates come in and they're kind of starting over. And, they're in a situation where they may have families and they're not really able to contribute. And so when they come into our program, it's a paid program, and it empowers them. It gives them, an opportunity to not only develop skills, but also contribute as well. And that's something that I know is very important for all of us. And so when I look at the workforce development work that's happening here in Evanston, I think about that because we work closely with those individuals. We get to know their stories, and there's a lot of commonalities between all of the candidates, and many of them are starting over, and they don't come in with much, and this workforce development empowers them and gives them the ability to learn, earn, as well as contribute to their households.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Kareem, do you have anything that you would want to add as far as the definition of workforce development?
Yeah, thank you. Workforce development, I see it as exposure, opportunity, and growth. Like here in Newark, similar to what Darrell was saying, right? It's very challenging in some of the urban areas at times, but I figure, our workforce gives the individuals the time to have exposure to the type of work that they can do and be part of these trade unions. The other part is having the opportunity. A lot of times we get the exposure, but we don't have the opportunity. And finally, being visible so they can encourage others to be that it's doable, it's reachable.
That's great. Thank you. I am just so grateful for the three of you, the focus that you have on community, on growth, and true investment in individuals. It's really wonderful to see, and I think it is definitely part of the recipe for success. And so I just wanted to hop back to Jay and talk about the recent report that was released that Ruth and I alluded to. Wondering, the partners that we had, including Elevate Current and the Metropolitan Planning Council, they really came together, y'all really came together to look at the different workforce development opportunities that are posed by lead service line replacements. And I'm wondering from your vantage point, what was the impetus for the report? Why did we need to step back and look at this and publish this report?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was the climate at the time, right? You had the federal government, which has put out quite a bit of money, although not enough, to help communities address this public health crisis. And it's particularly acute in Illinois. I mean, we're projected to have something like 820,000 lead service lines, right? And this is going into daycares, going into people's homes. And this issue needs to be addressed, right? And typically the communities with the highest level of lead exposure are historically disadvantaged areas that could also use the workforce opportunities. And so when we saw the potential for additional federal funding, as well as this conversation starting to move forward on the state level, it seemed like the ideal time to get together and talk about how the replacement of lead service lines could be done much more intentionally to provide opportunities throughout Chicago and Illinois' communities. And, I think the estimate was something like 2,000 direct jobs and about 9,000 indirect jobs. And so there's a lot of construction-related opportunities in this, but there's also a lot of opportunity to engage with the community and supply related and contractor related roles in this too. And it sort of ties together a lot of what we do at HIRE360. So we run a pretty robust pre-apprenticeship program. Very proud of our record, which over about the last 4 years, we've gotten about 800 people into every single different trade union in the Chicagoland area, and our training programs have now expanded statewide. We've been doing a lot of work with the Plumbers Local 130 in the Chicago area, who run a great bridge program with the Chicago Public Schools that we're proud to support to then help get just graduated CPS seniors into plumbing roles. And actually, a number of the candidates that got letters of indenture from that are starting to get their results from taking the plumber's test. So look forward to them being off onto great careers in plumbing. And really, that's kind of what it's all about, right? You've got funding that's coming in, and we need to make sure that it is directed and going to the communities that are most at risk from service lines. And so I was really thrilled that that's what this report focused on how we could kind of do this right, how we could provide contracting opportunities as well. I mean, I know we've sent a number of plumbing firms, I think it's about 5, to Elevate's program replacing lead service lines. So all MWB firms, so they can participate in these opportunities, but you have to be intentional about how you're letting those. So that way the same larger firms don't get all of the lead service line work. And so they need to be lumped together in a size that some of those firms can utilize after they win those bids to encourage and keep scaling up their businesses. So I think, the report that we work together on really kind of touches on all of these elements, right? The need for additional funding, how to be more intentional about the job creation to make sure it is going to the communities that are most impacted, and then how there are business opportunities in that, both on the contracting and then on the material side.
Yeah, that's really, really useful. I'm wondering as you were working through the report and as you were contributing to the team, what was something that surprised you the most or that meant the most to you?
I think it was a good opportunity to bring together a whole bunch of partners that don't necessarily always work together on these things. So I was really proud to bring in a number of our labor union partners to participate and present about their different apprenticeship program, how it works, and provide a lot more information to some of the philanthropic and other entities that were involved in the report. And the sharing of stories about different individuals or firms that had scaled up out of some of these opportunities was really heartening to what we were trying to do and to kind of move the needle forward on this. And so I just thought it was a really good conversation amongst a broad group of stakeholders that usually aren't at the same tables together to talk collectively on how we could solve some of these challenges.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I'm wondering, you mentioned getting folks into the apprenticeships and making sure that they get placed. Can you just illustrate for me how HIRE360 thinks about the whole pipeline, which you've alluded to a little bit, but can you walk me through the beginning, middle, and end of getting someone ready for specifically lead service line replacements? I'm hearing that you do a lot of placement in different trades and work in plumbing, but what do you see the needs are for lead service line replacement in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few trades that are really deeply involved in this. Obviously, everyone initially thinks about plumbers, and absolutely, right? But there's also a lot of work for operating engineers in terms of the directional drilling to get that new service line into someone's house. There's also a lot of, digging that needs to be done, landscaping and other components that are often performed by laborers. So there's a bunch of different trades that are involved in this. And I mean, as you noted, we work with all the different trade unions and recruit people for these opportunities. And I think, one of the things that was very interested in these conversations is because you're doing, one line into one person's house, right? It's a hard opportunity for, a lot of the people that we work with who are new apprentices to really go out and do that work themselves. And so by having lead service lines, employ a number of journey workers, there's the ability then to bring in more apprentices on other projects where they can be partnered with a journey worker and then learn the trade to then go off and do a lot of this work themselves. I mean, so for us, we, work primarily in social economic disadvantaged areas and recruit candidates and expose them and get them interested in the trades and then work with them through the entire time frame that it can take. I'm really proud we got couple more directional drillers into the operating engineers last year, and 4 or 5 into the heavy equipment program. We, like I said, have a number of candidates that are just getting their acceptance letters to the plumbers union right now, as well as often do a lot of work with the laborers union as well. So I think there are a lot of opportunities in this, provided there is more funding. And I think that often gets lost in this conversation, that unless there is more state resources, federal resources, because I was just with the mayor at an event the other night, he was talking about how critical the lead service line is, and his municipality just can't possibly afford the cost to do this themselves. And so we really need to get everybody at the table and talk about how we're going to put the funding behind this, because I think the report that we outlined really has a great path for how we can get the economic opportunities to people, but there has to be that initial funding.
That's great. Thank you so very much. I would like to welcome Kareem Adeem, once again, the Director of Newark, New Jersey's Water and Sewer Utilities. So Newark is remarkable. Y'all have completed a full citywide lead service line replacement, and definitely under public scrutiny, legal pressure, and accelerated timelines. Exactly how many lead service lines have been replaced?
The city of Newark at its height was replacing about 100 to 125 lead service lines a day. We replaced a little over 23,000 lead service lines. We did about 3,100 excavations. Pressure bust pipes, I work for the water department. We fix them every day. So that pressure kind of like allows us to not look at it as pressure, but look at it as an opportunity to perform.
I love that. It was the word pressure was absolutely, the pun was not intended. So thank you. That's absolutely wonderful. And so again, Newark is cited as one of the first cities to complete the full lead service line replacement. And wondering, as you were moving from planning this replacement to implementation, how and when did resident inclusion emerge as important?
I want to say, under the current administration, this administration, Mayor Baraka's administration has been in since 2014. He's a former community activist, so they've always been included into what we do in the city, right? Because our current mayor used to be a community activist. So the water department, which is one of the most forward-facing departments in the city next to police and sanitation. We're always doing projects. Newark is the third oldest major city in the country. And because of that, we have an old infrastructure. So we've always tried to make sure that community was involved in when we're doing things. I remember as a young supervisor going to community meetings and having to deal with different type of small mom and pop community organizations. So that's always been a collaboration or a partnership that we had. I think during the lead service line project, we were able to upscale those small mom and pop organizations to assist us in the community. And they played an enormous and a fabulous time helping us get to what we had to do. They know the community. I mean, they know the temperature they know the current environment of the temperature of the areas that they serve. We don't. We may think we do as elected officials, but we don't. They do. They really do.
Yeah, that's great. And so how did, through that community engagement or throughout your involvement in the community, did workforce development kind of plug into the community involvement piece? How did that emerge as a priority?
So we collaborated with them. So the City of Newark, Department of Workforce Development, the State of New Jersey Department of Labor, and our elected officials from the state level and the city level, and those nonprofits, we sat at a table. We started talking. Like, we want to make sure that we heard the residents through the nonprofits and those community organizations and those district leaders, community groups, that they wanted to make sure when we spend this money that the community is involved in it, right? Not only in just telling us not only us coming into the community saying we're going to replace pipes, but how does the community be a part of this replacement? And we heard them, right? In the water department, we already had a history of in making sure that our bigger contracts employed city residents, right? Or work with MBEs and WMBEs to help them build capacity. So I think the lead service line replacement, we're about to spend $220 million, gave us the opportunity to scale up a lot of things that we weren't looking to do. Scale up a little quicker. We had pushback from the unions, what we couldn't do, what they wouldn't do. They felt that they had workers. And our message was to them that you had workers, but we want workers that resemble the community. We wanted Black and brown individuals just living in the community to work on this project. And we assured them through the State Department of Labor, we got a special class. I think we did 3 cohorts of 20 individuals each. We made sure we provided transportation. Every obstacle that the union may have put in front of us, our workforce development, along with our nonprofit support, community organization, we made sure we had a plan for it. Pre-screening residents before they go into the apprenticeship program, making sure we provided transportation, which was about 2.5 hours away. The training center was 2.5 hours away from Newark. So we had to deal with that. Making sure that we provided transportation to and back, and there was no stores around to get lunch. So making sure we provided lunch to the people that we were sending to this training center, right? These are obstacles nobody never really look at until you have to get down into them. I think our early collaboration with those small community groups just made it a little easier for us, right? From them recommending people, getting the word out and other things like that. And also employing them along the way. Those community groups worked, they were a part of our program as well, right? We made sure in our contracts, we had language in the contracts that, depending on the amount of lead service lines that you're going to place, you had to hire a minimum of 3 apprentices, 5 apprentices, 10, all the way up until 20. I think the biggest contract, they had to hire a minimum of 20 apprentices, workers, employees, men and women, to be on this project for the duration of their contract. And I think having language in there, and holding their foot with the union saying we can supply the staff, right? Because we started putting them in an apprenticeship program.
Yeah, that's great. And so this is very detailed and complicated. Like you said, you can work really hard to get folks into a program, but the investment that needs to be made to make sure that it is successfully completed, that there's a welcoming culture at the end of the program. Those are all really important components of any workforce program. I'm wondering, as we're talking through all this complexity that you were navigating, getting folks ready to work, like, did this in any way delay or accelerate program implementation as far as like getting the service lines replaced?
I would say it accelerated it. I would say it accelerated it because we had a workforce, right? That we were already, so the city started its initial first shovel in the ground March 19th, 2019, right? So we accelerated the program in September like 13th for 2019. So those 6 months when we did our first program, our first replacements, at that time, we had replaced a little over 650 lead service lines in that 6 months period. We used that as a pilot program. We looked at that as a pilot program, what our do's and don't. And we also looked at it as what we can do with our staff. So when we ramped up, we already had a template of what we went through the last 6 months. So when we got the financial backing from the county, we were already ready to go. We knew we needed to put more people in the apprenticeship training program. We knew we had to bid contracts out a little better. And I think, working with the unions at first, it's the normal union stuff. You get a little bit of pushback, not a warm reception, but at the end of the day, some of their members was going to be bidding on these contracts, some of these firms with their members that's currently already in the union, right? And they can't do all the work. Newark didn't just have a lead service line project. We had about 20 other different construction projects going on inside the water and sewer utility. So I think it kind of accelerated it because they seen we were not playing and we were moving, and we had support from the federal, county, and regular municipal level to get this thing done.
Great. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really important, and I'm seeing the benefits that you all have of already having the community connections, not like starting from scratch when you're going to initiate a project, but having that ongoing and authentic community engagement. So when there is the need to start investing more deeply in workforce and getting participants, when it is time to go into the community and start replacing the lead service lines, you already have that community of trust that's built in. And so I really commend you for that. That's like the best strategy that I can see to make this work.
And Melissa, I just want to say something, right? That community trust of working with those mom and pop nonprofit organizations or community organizations, the lead service line, at one time we thought we were losing it. I think we regained it, right? Because we did what we said we were going to do, right? We were more visible. They were out there with us. They started advocating more for us than we were advocating for ourselves, right? Because they seen we were doing the work. COVID, I just wanted to take COVID. We looked at COVID when it first came in. We thought, whoa, we're replacing about January and February. We replaced like 2,000 lead service lines a month in the month of January 2020. February 2021, we reached like 2,900 and like 50 or 60. So coming into March, when everything shut down, like March the 13th of 2020, we had already replaced 1,100 something lead service lines, right? Those mom and pop organizations, the community was like, hey, you're not going to stop replacing the lead service lines, are you? But to us, our governor was like, construction is going to continue. So the community came out and helped us during COVID because now more people home. The community knows everybody, right? Those community organizations. And the community organizations started, it was a shortage on PPE. They were giving us, hand craft masks to put on to the workers, right? We would go to different blocks and they were like, hey, we got booties, we got the face masks. We just want to make sure you're going to get our lead service lines done. And we were like, unbelievable. We were shocked. That was surprising because we're like, man, this community loves us.
That's amazing.
They did that for the workers.
That's amazing. I love that. One thing that I wanted to quickly touch on as far as the contractors you mentioned that are bidding on other water projects and doing these ones, how did you use the business goal setting? So minority business enterprise, women business enterprise, and any of the other goals that are required or encouraged through the government.
So those goals that are required, or those percentages, we make sure that you can never say you can't find some type of trade. So we're doing our bid specs, right? So when we're doing the bid specs to put out, we're looking at all the different type of trades that may be needed for this project, right? So during our pre-bid meeting, in New Jersey, we have a lot of pre-bid meetings. We invite the MBEs and the WMBEs. We first invite all those companies in the city of Newark to those. Once the bid go out, maybe within a week, we have a pre-bid meeting where we bring all the MBEs, WMBEs, any type of contractor to those type of events. And they start learning, hey, we're doing a lead service line project. We're doing a water main replacement project, a sewer main replacement project. We need suppliers. We need workforce. We need electricians. So at that opportunity and at that same time, when we had those pre-bid events, we bring our Department of Workforce Development, right now, the affirmative action, Office of Affirmative Action too, so they can help people that's not certified to be an MBE or WBE start the process of getting their certifications or their public works management certifications. So at that time, that networking event, right, even if they wasn't able to get on that particular job, they maybe get on another one. And a quick story. Remember during our lead service lines, we had a lady come with her two sons, and she had a cleaning business, right? She had a cleaning business. And everybody's going around the room like, this is a construction type job, right? She left out of there she left out of there and became certified WBE, Women Minority Owned Business, right? However, I can remember 6 months into our lead service replacement, we get a call, the fitting blew off on one of the meters, basement flooded, right? Boom, everybody get up there, water shut off, the contractor arrived. We're there for about an hour getting the water out. And on my way out the door, the lady's coming in. The lady that we seen 6 months ago. And I'm like, she's like, hey, director, and we talking. I'm like, she's like, yeah, I had the contractor come and clean the house. And it was just amazing to see, like, she was at an event that that wasn't unrelated to what she was doing. She had ended up getting a purchase order to do some cleaning, which eventually I seen her maybe a year later. She was doing a cleaning contract with our local school board during the summer for the summer youth. And I'm like, wow, like you came to an event unrelated, landed a little cleaning job because of water leak. So this is the type of community investments that, we're proud of, especially when you're from the community.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. So I am wondering if you could give advice to other municipalities that are looking towards lead service line replacements and wanting to incorporate workforce development. What are the one or two things that you would want to see or that would be the most impactful?
I think one of the most impactful is, having language in there, right? If it's your town or your utility, you're about to invest money into your town or utility, you should have language in there that you want to have special apprenticeship programs or work prior with the State Department of Labor, not always the union, to get special class, work with the Department of Labor and your local workforce development board to make sure you get a special apprenticeship classes in place for your project ahead of time, right? So you can have these apprentices ready to go when that contract is out. And inside that language, it should be a minimum of what they need to hire, right, for the duration of their project, of the new apprentices that's coming through your program, your local board of workforce. Two, I would probably say, having the ability to, start the project. A lot of towns or municipalities or utilities are bogged down with the notion of, I don't know where to start. Start, make the decision, get a shovel in the ground, pivot along the way, get a shovel in the ground. Because once you start getting the shovel in the ground and people know you're serious, right? The other support will start coming to you. It will gravitate to you. Whether that's the technical, whether that's like Jay Rowell was saying, right? How they're training people, right? You open the doors for them to place people, right? It's always good to have a spot for somebody to go. Because the union can come back and say, hey, well, we got 40 people that's not working, right? However, the language kind of protects you because you're giving an opportunity to your community to be a part of replacing something in your community, and that language helps. Well, but you do need to start.
That's great.
Right,
I
the
don't know if you
money's
see me
drying
taking
up.
notes over here. I'm like getting ready to like be inspired and taking notes about all of the wisdom that you're bringing in and sharing. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I am so amazed at all that you've been able to accomplish, and I'm so grateful for you being here. And I do want to also create some space and time for our other guest, Darrell King. So I'm going to switch us over for a moment, if that's okay. And while we're doing that, I definitely wanted to thank you again for your time. And if folks have questions, if questions are popping up, if thoughts are popping up, make sure that you're using that Q&A portion of Zoom so that we can answer the questions that are most important to you. So thank you, Darrell King, for being here with us. As a reminder, you are with Evanston, and I understand that it's a community about 76,000 residents, and it is situated on the shores of Lake Michigan in Cook County. I'm originally from Kenosha, so I like wave at you from my hometown. So that being said, it is about a quarter the size of Newark, and it is undertaking lead service line replacement in a little bit of a different context than large cities or urban areas. So I'm wondering if you can start off by sharing what Evanston's Workforce Development Division is and how lead service line replacement fits into the city's broader workforce goals.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. So our program's set up differently than what was going on in Newark. So the workforce development, the city does have a workforce development division, but our program was born independently of the workforce development division. So we've had a apprenticeship program, pretty successful one, that's more than 20 years old. And so we were able to just take that model and duplicate it for our own workforce development program, which is a couple of years old, maybe a little bit older now. And so what we actually do is we take Evanston residents and we bring them into the water utility. And our previous apprenticeship program, we rotated them through four divisions, two here at the water plant and two out in the distribution system, 6 months at a time for a 2-year period. So we copied that. And we created a workforce development program where we take Evanston residents and we rotate them through actually now 2 divisions. So they learn in our distribution division that's actually performing the lead service line replacements, and they rotate through our public services street division where they perform the restoration work. And so it fit right into what we were already doing. It's a 2-year paid apprenticeship workforce development program. And since we've started it, we have partnered with our workforce development division, separate division, to incorporate some additional training opportunities that we learned through our first cohort. And we already knew this actually through the apprenticeship program. That was essential to the success of these programs, and a lot of it centered around soft skill training. So it aligned with what we were already doing as a city, or more specifically as a utility.
Yeah, that's great. So can you break down a little bit more, like the more like hard technical skills that are learned on site through the apprenticeship, and then also the like soft skills programming or the different ways that folks in the program are taught to navigate the soft skills?
Yeah, so more of the hard technical skills, they're actually learning, how to install a new copper service line, using the tapping machine, the saddles, managing the copper, flaring tools, everything that goes into installing a new service, buffalo boxes, corp stops, curb stops, everything. They learn all of that. We also, the restoration work that occurs in the street and all of the equipment associated with performing that patch or, what's left over in the street, patchwork in the parkways. They learn all of that and all of the tools and equipment that goes along with that. They learn to operate the heavy equipment, the dump trucks, all of the equipment necessary to perform some of the work. They get their CDL license, within the first 6 months of the program, and they receive paid training for that. They get their permits, and then they eventually go and get their CDL license. They get the flagger training, all of the general duty, bloodborne pathogen training, all of that stuff, the OSHA, 8-hour type training. So they go through the whole thing. The city pays for it. They're paid a wage while they're here during that 2-year period. And, more of the soft skills training, we're not good at that. At one point, we can talk to you, counsel you, coach you, and then ultimately discipline you. And we didn't want it to turn into a discipline type of thing where we just issuing discipline a lot. And so we reached out to our workforce development division and said, hey, these things are going on. We're not equipped to really handle that. That's not what we are good at. and so instead of this turning into something, and what can you all offer us in that? And they established an entire soft skill program, and we schedule they schedule trainings and they attend trainings. And because, sometimes there are just things where you're like, hey, don't you're not supposed to do that at work. You think they, some come in knowing that already, but some people don't. And so they need training in that. And, so we partnered with workforce development to provide that training, and it's working out. It's working out great. And, so, those are just some things, hard skills, soft skills that we were able to provide.
Thank you. And you answered my next question about how it's funded. It's really great to see the city funding the preparation as well, the wage that folks get to do the work. That's excellent. I love to see that. I am wondering, as we see more mid-sized cities come on board and think about the connection between workforce development and the lead service line replacements, what are the things that you would urge those cities to do right away?
One of the things I would recommend is just reach out to people that if you know of someone that has a program, reach out to them, ask them about it, copy it if you can. When the whole lead thing got really big, I attended a seminar in DC, and they had, leading folks that was out there doing it already. And Cincinnati already had an inventory map where you could go put your address in and figure out and learn what was on the public side, what was on the private side. I copied it. I said, oh, okay. I brought that information back, showed it to our staff, went into our GIS. We created a dashboard and in essence copied it. And so down to the disclaimer, they had a disclaimer on there when you go into it. I sent it to legal, and we used that as an example, as a template to create our own disclaimer that pretty much says, this information might not be accurate type of disclaimer. And so I would recommend that. Don't think that you got to do all the heavy lifting. Just find out somebody else is doing it and see if you can use some of it, all of it, or what have you. Don't reinvent the wheel. Secondly is managing outside forces, influences. So our program was created off of an initiative from an elected official, council member. And so you just want to be aware of that if that's how someone's program got started, and just manage the outside influences that can come along with that, because sometimes incorrect perceptions and expectations can sometimes come from that, which can make managing the workers difficult, more of a challenge than it should be. So just being aware of that, managing that, and then the soft skill stuff, be aware of that. Is that necessary where this program may be or not? And so that's something else to be aware of as well.
That is wonderful. Thank you for naming the external factors that are happening in our communities that impact these programs, purposefully or not. We see a lot of different factors that are playing into community development, historical disenfranchisement, and then, always the dynamics of like how things come to be, how programs get started, and what that means for you as an administrator to see through a project that's this important. So thank you for bringing that in. That's really, really awesome. Is there anything that you want to share that I have not asked you about yet? We have a little bit, just about a minute before we have to turn it back over to Jay to close us out.
Just that, it's at least here in Evanston right now, we're looking at 20 years. Once the LCRI, that kicks all the way in, it could come down to 10, or if we can get a deferral. So it's a long period of time. We're learning as we go, best techniques to replace them, the impacts of trees. Sometimes you have to overly notify people. People won't respond to you, and you need them to respond to get this work done. And so Kareem mentioned, just working with the community groups to they got the posts. Their hands are on the pulse of the community, and that could be a good way. But there's no one way to get participation. It's a work in progress. It takes a lot of effort. We on average have to communicate with people 7 to 10 times before they'll even respond to us.
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge and can be frustrating, and so just all of those things. But it's a work in progress. It's a long process, whether it's 10 years, 17 years, or 20 years, however long it takes. We're learning with each experience.
Yeah, thank you. And I love also that view out into the future. We have time to work on this. We have time to get the pipeline ready and impact careers long term. So thank you so much. And thanks both of you for your extremely thoughtful insights. I would like to bring Jay back in to close us out before we get into the Q&A session. I am just very excited about the information that's been shared today and how we can apply those things across Illinois. So I see Kareem's hand. I definitely would like to, I think I'm going to ask Jay to kind of give a couple of comments, and then I want to make sure that all of the panelists can weigh in as we're closing out and that we're moving into questions. And so if you want to spend a couple of minutes, please, Jay, talking about what needs to happen next for lead service line replacement and workforce development. And if you could speak specifically to how utility and community leaders can help when it comes to this issue.
Yeah, sure. I think, for starters, right, funding, and some more funding, right? There needs to be more advocacy around this. We have 820,000 lines to replace, and we've got some resources that are dedicated to this, but we need to find more funding. So whether that's part of the state's capital program or others, that's something we definitely need to build more support from the community for to do this. Also, I think Kareem mentioned something really important, how they did the program in Newark, which was there were requirements to hire new apprentices. This is something that I've been having a lot of conversations with the city about having a requirement for apprentices on a lot of this work. So we have at the city a local area requirement. We have at the city 50% city residency goal, but there isn't one around new apprentices, so providing new opportunities. I know I got from Richard Diaz a model out of Wisconsin and from WRTP that I started having conversation with city leaders. So I would love to have some more advocacy around this issue because it could definitely provide some more opportunities. And then a lot of the private water utilities across the state can use a lot of the information and guidelines that we already put together in this report, right, and get going on some of this right now. So I think there's a lot that different private utilities basically could do right now to sort of pick up this mantle and get running with it.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And thanks to all three of you again. I would like to turn it back over to Ruth to lead us through the question and answer session and to take us to the end of our time together, and also make sure that Kareem and other panelists have the ability to weigh in as we have time for before we close out today. It's been an honor to speak with all of you, and I'm very excited to stay connected and to keep seeing all of the great work that you all are doing. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It was really, really great. And we do have a couple of questions, which I'll get to in a minute. I have a few of my own as well. Please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A if you do have them, and I'll get them in a minute. But Kareem, you had your hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and let you ask your question or make your statement.
Yeah, I just want to echo two things. One for Darrell, he brought up something that was very important. It is a struggle, the 10, 15, 20 times trying to get one house or one residence to actually, or owner, somebody to give you some type of authority or permission. In Newark, which also laid out throughout the state, we had to get an ordinance passed, give us right of entry, that we didn't need the ownership permission. That was important to us, to getting into a house, right? If you were a resident, you lived there, you may not was the owner, we had to get that, right of entry permission. You can give us the authority to come into the house and make that improvement. But, and once we got that, on a state level, we had to lobby the state to allow us to use public money on private property. In Newark, we don't own any part of the lead service line, but the utility is responsible for it under the requirements, right? The lead and copper rule. So we had to make sure that on the state level, right, we declared lead service lines a public health issue, which allowed us to use public money on private property. So those two pieces of legislation was crucial to advancing this program, right? Because in the first 6 months, remember, 650 services in 6 months versus the first 2 weeks of September, when you accelerate, you get 1,000. All that was having that language in place where we could just knock on the door. Somebody wanted their lead service line replaced, but they wasn't the owner. We couldn't find the owner. It was an LLC company in Florida. It jumped to Louisiana, it jumped to Texas. I just wanted to echo that importance of legislation.
Right. And I can echo that a little bit too with my colleagues who are working on Lead Care Cook County, which is trying to remove lead service lines from childcare facilities, the amount of touches that have to go on to do that, and this is again a free service, is really interesting. So it's a continuing problem, I think, for all that are moving towards lead service line replacement, and something that we're trying to look for solutions for. So thank you for that, Kareem and Darrell and Jay. All of you have touched on that. So here's a question, and this one goes to Darrell. Does the staff, after the training is administered by the city, go to work? Okay, does the staff who's trained, do they go to work for lead service line contractors within the community, or do they continue working for the city replacing lead service lines as their normal duties? So yeah, let's talk about that. So the folks that complete the program, what is their expectation when they finish the program?
So during the interview process, and we tell them up front, it's a 2-year program and it's not guaranteed for future employment with the city. So I'm very clear about that. Now, the goal is, as positions open, whether it's at the water utility or within the city somewhere else, that they can apply and potentially get one of those full-time positions. In the past, we've hired many of our apprentices into full-time roles, and our first workforce development cohort, we hired one of those workers into full-time employment. But it's not guaranteed. What we do when positions become available, we make them aware of them. So if they come available here in the city, we tell them about it. If they become available with other utilities, like for instance, we use the Illinois Section American Water Works Association Career Center Board. We tell them about it. We make sure they're aware of opportunities. So many of our previous, especially our apprentice program, because that one is so much older, many of them have been hired. Others have been hired by other utilities, but it's a 2-year program and it's not guaranteed employment, future employment with the city, and they're paid. They start off at $18 an hour for 6 months. Then they graduate. If they pass their evaluation, they go to $20 per hour for 6 months. And then if they matriculate into the final year, they go to $22 an hour for the program that we have here. And it's all funded through the water fund.
Great. So lots of incentives to stay in the program. And, because you have a workforce development division, I believe that helps. So let's talk about that a little bit. So both you and Newark, Evanston and Newark both have workforce development divisions, which I think was really essential for you guys to move folks through the system. Is that true? I'm making a statement, but it sounds to me like that is true for both of you, that without that, it would have been much more difficult to move these folks through the system for lead service line replacement.
I'll chime in first. With Evanston, we were the workforce development division for many, many years. We recently, I'm not sure exactly how old the workforce development division is within the city now, but we never worked with them on our apprenticeship program. And we just recently, over the past year or so, began working with them and using their resources with our newly created workforce development program. So it was entirely, for many, many years, we were just doing all of it out of the water utility.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Now, with us, I think with us, we have a little small program inside the water utility, which really focused on college interns coming in, right, to be engineers, architects, drafters, IT personnel. However, I think with our workforce board, with the city that's been around since I've been working for the city, it allowed us to enter into doors that we weren't familiar with. right? It allowed them to do the work that we didn't know that needed to be done behind the scenes, right? So yes, without them, screening employees, screening the future candidates, giving us information of what they're going to need and how they're going to provide transportation, what may be obstacles of getting people into the union. Yes, we wouldn't have known that, right? Because we're bringing in, and our own internal system inside the department was mainly more of college interns coming.
Gotcha. Jay, I think this sort of speaks to what HIRE360 does as well, is sort of that sort of feeding the apprentices in or the folks in. So can you talk a little bit about how 360 engages with the workforce directly, not just the union, not just the folks that hire, but are you doing soft skills education as well?
Yeah, so we recruit candidates, and then we have about a 200-hour training program that we run people through. It has soft skills, resume writing. It has a lot of math, and it has some math after the math, and there's more math after we've taught people math, and then a little more math because most of the aptitude tests for the trades are really heavily focused on math, as well as spatial reasoning. So we do a lot of work in those components. We also help get a number of certifications for the candidates, whether it's OSHA, first aid, CPR, fall protection, flagging, rigging, forklift driving, other things that will help the candidates get additional points, depending on what trades are likely to open up. And this is all paid stipend training that we provide for that 200 hours. And then we have a barrier reduction fund, and we've given out well over $600,000 to pay for first sets of tools, boots, a couple of the trades apprenticeship programs. When you're accepted, they don't pay initially. Most of the trades apprenticeship programs do, but we provide then stipends, so that way we can eliminate that financial barrier to someone getting into that trade. We've been paying for, Lyft rides, taxi rides. We just started a partnership with Lyft, actually, where we're getting codes and then able to use that for some of our candidates to help them get out to apprenticeship programs with the job sites. And we literally, take everybody. We borrow the Chicago Federation of Labor's van and drive people out to different apprenticeship programs on application days. We'll pay the fee for that. Literally anything that's needed. We've taken people to get birth certificates, other documentation, right? So that way they can meet the different requirements for the U.S. Department of Labor on that. I think a little different than New Jersey, which has the State Department of Labor run apprenticeship programs. In Illinois, it's all U.S. DOL based. So those guidelines are all based off of whatever the federal government requires. So we try to literally do anything and everything we can. We fix people's cars. We've helped with housing. Anything that is required or could be a barrier for someone to get in, right? But the biggest challenge we have is time. It's always time, because we can put someone through the training, but if a trade isn't open because there isn't work, right, then we have to really work with the candidates to keep them interested, find them other temporary employment and other things like that, which is, can be a real challenge. I opened this up talking about a candidate that we had that we trained in 4 years later, because there just has not been that much work on high rises, right, was able to finally start her apprenticeship. So
to have that pipeline with the idea of, as I think it was Kareem or maybe it was Darrell, pointed out that having that language when you're sending things out to bid, that they have to hire a apprentice, so you have that conduit for those folks to go to is very important. All right, we do have some more questions up here. So one of them is, do any of the panelists know of an example of municipal agreements where different local governments consolidate contracts and conduct joint procurement opportunities? And there's a follow-up question there too, but I'll stop there. So the idea, I think, is to start to regionalize some lead service line replacement work. And does anybody have any examples of that?
I can't call out the organization right now, but that does exist. Fire hydrant painting or purchasing different water treatment chemicals or whatever. Those things are out there. I'm not aware of joint bidding, with water, with lead service line replacements, but that's out there. That's a thing. And that's something that municipalities, even Evanston, has used that It's just escaping my memory right now of what that organization is called, but that happens. Backfill material, stone, all of that stuff. We participate in that.
Yeah, and if I could chime in on that, I'm not as familiar with that, right? I know the state has some bulk purchasing agreements that municipalities can draw off of, but I think I have a little bit of a hesitation around some of that because one of the ways we are trying, was noted in the report, is about how the contracts could be of a size so that way some of the MWB firms that we are working with could then, lead and be primes on that. So if you're talking about, regionalizing the RFP on lead service lines, then you're likely to get just much larger firms that are able to then bid the work on that scope. And so, I think there's some work that would need to be done on that to make sure that we're providing opportunities for some of the firms that certainly the ones that we're working with, ones we've sent to Elevate for the daycare lead service line replacement program and other things to make sure there's opportunities for them as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So the other follow-up part of this is whether or not doing that, and this kind of leads to your point, Jay, would it actually decrease the cost of lead service line replacement? The assumption is that it would, but I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on those. Kareem, you took yourself off mute quickly.
Yeah, I mean, my answer was to the first one. I mean, similar to what Darrell said, it is a lot of different co-ops and joint purchases that we do. I haven't seen it too much in construction. It's very tricky in construction, right? Because things can happen. Regionalizing, we work with the state of New Jersey. We during COVID to explore what would that look like, if the state bid out a bulk contract to do lead service lines in South Jersey, Central Jersey, and Northern New Jersey. We, at that present time, after the task force that was together, we thought it wasn't not feasible, right? Because the cost, we thought it would reduce the cost, but it really kind of like explodes the cost.
Interesting.
There's only a certain amount of firms that have the capacity.
And one thing I'll add to that is, what you have to be cautious of as well is if your project is being funded through the state, like through the state revolving fund or something like that, there are requirements that may not be fulfilled if you jointly, coming together and trying to bid this out. So and some of that funding comes with principal forgiveness. So nobody wants to give that up, trying to come together to joint bid something. And then municipalities have been passing things like responsible bidder ordinances that have additional requirements that come into play that can pose a challenge as well. So, those couple things to keep in mind with that.
Yeah, and if I could add, I think there's probably some way on the material component of this that there might be some cost savings and other advantages on that. But on a lot of the contracting part, it seems very challenging, as we've discussed.
Great. I am taking notes as you guys are talking too, because these are important points and things for us to keep in mind. So we're at time. So I want to go ahead and just thank everyone for joining us today. This has been a super interesting conversation and we really appreciate it. Melissa, you did an amazing job. And I just will share quickly our contact information here with everyone. Thanks for attending. This will be posted on YouTube. We will send out a follow-up email for anybody interested in the operator's CE credits. We will be sending out the ID for the event. Posted on YouTube. Check out our website often. And then I believe I have Melissa's contact information here too. So Melissa Gombar at elevatenp.org. Thanks again for everyone for attending. Thank you to our fabulous guests. We really appreciate all of your time and energy that you put toward this, and have a great day.